All right.
We got everybody? Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the regular meeting of Trinity County Planning Commission, November 17th, 2022 at 6 p.m. You'll all join me for the pledge. It is a special meeting. It's a regular special meeting. If you all join me for the pledge, we'll get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. At this time, any members of the public may step forward for public comment period. Members of the public may address the Planning Commission on any matter not listed on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to speak?
This is for items not on the agenda.
That is correct.
Okay, we'll wait then.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to close public comment and move on to regular calendar items. Item 1 is to approve the minutes of the October 27th, 2022 meeting.
I move approval of the minutes from the October meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Barrett seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes approved. Item 2 is a rezone and general plan amendment of P-20/P-21-33. A request to change the zoning district of parcel from a single-family residential, low-density R1A to a multiple family district, R-3 district, and change the general plan designation of the parcel from a single-family residential low-density SF-L to a multifamily residential high-density MF-H. Proposed CEQA determination, mitigated negative declaration. The project parcel is located at 161 Ransom Road, Weaverville, APN 024-510-002. Applicant D. Ryan, planner S. Fisher. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to the planner for comments.
Thank you, Planning Commission Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public here and on Zoom. I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing project number P-20-20 and P-2133. And just to explain like the two project numbers, there was an initial application that kind of changed the parameters of the project, and then there was an additional submission. So internally, we just assigned one of them to the rezone and the other to the general plan amendment. So moving both forward, we wanted to carry along those two project numbers to carry the history of this application. So the zone amendment and general plan designation amendment request is on 161 Ransom Road in Weaverville. And initially this application was submitted in 2020. The project site was identified during the development of the current housing element of the general plan as a potential site to increase housing in Trinity County. The project has since changed in that it no longer includes the plan for, there is no, I should say, development proposal as of this time. So part of the proposed mitigated negative declaration initial study is for maximum build out potential, which was scaled out to be about 90 units. But right now, there isn't a proposal for a structure on the site. It's just to rezone for the potential of a building permit being submitted. But for the sake of environmental review, they wanted to see what max capacity would be rather than anything less than that. So over the course of reviewing this project, comments were routed to different agencies in the county. Most of the comments were in regards to when development were to take place. For example, a sewer connection from environmental health, from Weaverville CSD. There was a comment stating that they believe that they could serve it, but there might need to be an increase of the size of the valve, but they weren't sure of that at this time. A bulk of the comments in regards to the environmental review portion did come from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, where there was comment originally submitted before the project proposed mitigated negative declaration was circulated at the state clearinghouse, but there was additional comments submitted after that circulation period had concluded. And so those initial comments regarded hydrology, mitigation measures regarding monarch butterfly, nesting birds, bats, native vegetation and landscaping, inadvertent entrapment of wildlife, lighting, low impact development, and reporting if special status species were identified on the site during construction. After the circulation period had concluded and after this project had been noticed for Planning Commission, Department of Fish and Wildlife submitted an additional comment for the proposed document specifically, requesting more mitigation measures in regards to invasive plant species on the site. And so the proposed MMRP was submitted as part of the on the website, and then I believe also shared with the commissioners. And so that outlines all of the proposed mitigations for this project that would make any impacts of development less than significant on the environment. So in the original, in the staff recommendation within the staff report, it recommends continuation because right as we were like preparing to post this is when we got that comment from CDFW and I was like, whoa, hold on. But in that draft MMRP, it does explain the changed language. So originally, the language stated that there was going to be washing of heavy equipment in order to not spread weed species. But the recommendation from CDFW was to kind of beef that up a little bit, I guess to say, to include the washing of vehicles, to specify that it'd be more pressure washing. The language is specifically on page 4. But generally, when CDFW has a comment, we like to follow that since they are the experts in the fish and wildlife world. So that's why it's been recommended to change that language in the MMRP and update it in the mitigations within the draft M&D. Also received during public review and added to the proposed document on the website was the public comment voicing concerns regarding transportation and a few other concerns for once the development does go through on the parcel. And so transportation was one of the impacts analyzed for when development were to occur on the parcel. Based on staff's review of these concerns submitted and then comparing it to the discussion within the proposed document, we found that it adequately captures any transportation impacts and believe that the determination that any transportation impacts will be less than significant is sufficient. Additional concerns discuss the potential for there being increased, not just vehicle traffic, but foot traffic. We got a comment submitted by the Human Response Network requesting that there be a fence around the perimeter of the site. And a way to capture that, since we can't necessarily say, like at this time, that a specific development needs to have a fence, it is a potential to put a plan review overlay on the site and say, okay, since we are wanting to go forward with increasing R3 zoning and the multifamily general plan districts in the county, but right now we don't really have any development plans, we could put on that plan review. And so it's caught when you look at the zoning of that parcel that there needs to be additional review of any development. And so potentially that could be a way to say, okay, in the future, maybe a fence be required or other requirements as you see fit. So when looking at projects, we like to make sure that they follow sound principles of land use. So staff believes that the proposed ISMND sufficiently evaluates the potential environmental impacts of rezoning and changing the general plan designation of this parcel, and helps ensure that all potential impacts are evaluated and mitigated. In addition, due to the surrounding parcels to the area, in the land use table, it kind of outlines how to the north, to the south, there are multifamily residential parcels. So this would be an area where that zoning, it wouldn't be spot zoning. There are several similar parcels in that area. In addition, the project is found to not be injurious. Based on staff review, we don't believe that the rezoning or changing of the general plan designation would cause nuisance issues or cause detrimental effects to public health, safety, or welfare. And finally, when it comes to plan consistency, as I kind of stated in the beginning, this parcel was identified from our housing element as a potential site that we can increase our multifamily housing stock in the county. So we find that to be very consistent with our housing element. And for project consistency with the California Environmental Quality Act, I keep alluding to the proposed initial study mitigated negative declaration, which has gone through review from SHN, our environmental land use planners. In addition, it was circulated longer than typically. So we initially posted it and then it didn't get into the paper. So then by the time that original 30-day posting with the state was done, it never got in the paper. So it went in for another 30 days to make sure that the public had sufficient time to comment, that they were aware that we weren't skipping any requirements. So all of that being said, while the recommendation written on the staff report requests a continuance, since we've had some time to sit on the CDFW recommendation that we got after the project was noticed for Planning Commission, I would recommend that the project be recommended by the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors, based on the findings and support that the CEQA determination of a mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program go forth with the amended mitigation measure Bio 1. So that's the invasive species mitigation measure, and to amend the zoning district for the property from single family residential low density to multiple family district, and amend the general plan designation of the property from single family residential low density to multifamily residential high density. And then I would recommend with the plan review, typically developments, there's usually like a use permit or a building permit in the queue, like while a rezone is happening, but that's not the case right now. So that's why I would say plan review may be sufficient. And I can answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for staff?
I have one main one. So, there were 4 letters of comment in the ISMND, but staff only that I could see addressed 3. So you thoroughly addressed, where you addressed transportation and the fence and that issue. But I didn't see a response to Mr. Simmons' letter asking about the right-of-way that goes through the property that provides access to his property. And so I was wondering, how that is going to be addressed.
And I want to couple that with the easement that he quoted for the utility easement, because it seems with those easements to reduce the size of this parcel dramatically, and I don't see that anywhere on your maps.
So I haven't been able to check out that utility easement, so I would have to see how much of the parcel, like how much of it could be developed outside of that utility easement. But in regards to the access, there are multiple requirements for R3 district development that are different than like R1 district. So like that, the drainage plan, additional like encroachment requirements. So that's one of the reasons why like I agree with the plan review option, because taking a look at issues like these once the building permit is actually submitted, I think would be necessary.
So where did the 90 unit determination come from then if these easements weren't calculated into that or aren't known?
So that 90 unit was just looking at the full, just looking at the acreage and shape. So that was developed by our land use consultants, SHN.
So if it's reduced acreage though, wouldn't it be reduced units?
Yeah.
If there's only, for example, I'm not sure about the calculations, but for example, if it's only 3.45 acres of developable land because of the right-of-ways, wouldn't it be 3.45 times whatever that number is to come up with the number of units rather than 5.12 acres?
That sounds correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any more questions for staff?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So, with regards to those easements, so if let's say it's a electricity easement, is it possible for that to go through the driveway or the parking lot, or can you build on top of a utility easement, or is a utility easement such where it is completely non-developable?
I would have to see the specific parameters of this easement to see like what the flexibility is before I'd want to speak to that.
Okay, that information is not, we don't have that information. Okay. And also one last question. I was at a Planning Commissioners Association conference with Commissioner Barrett, and there was a lot of concern about the state's mandates of increasing our capacity for housing throughout the different municipalities. And that's not something that I've heard from staff or from our supervisors. Is there any mandate from the state that you know of, planner, to increase our housing capacity by a certain time?
So I've seen a few assembly bills that encourage like multifamily residential development, but a lot of what I've seen like have the caveat of urban areas. So I haven't really found anything like specific that like meet the parameters of Trinity County. That isn't to say that it doesn't exist. I just haven't, I haven't seen that yet, but I can take a look into it.
May I share something?
Okay. Thank you.
While you and Rory were down at that planning commission deal, Bill, Carol, and I were at in Eureka or Arcata there, and they were discussing that as well. And while that was going on, I believe we looked it up during the course of that meeting, and I think it said through like 2024 we had to come up with 2 extra houses. I think that's what Trinity County's allotment is for this big development thing.
That is correct. Is there any other questions pertaining to this matter? Okay, thank you, Ms. Fisher. Appreciate your report. At this time, I'd like to bring it back to the applicant.
There is no applicant at this point.
The applicant's Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan, would you like to speak in this matter?
I don't think so, sir. I don't think I can say we've done all the studies taken quite a few years. I believe that
Yeah, if you're going to talk, could you please approach the podium?
I'm Dana Ryan, and I live in Weaverville, and this is my proposed project. I believe that the count they came from was from the usable surface that is there, and that's how they came up with the 90 units, 90 plus, in fact. And then the utility easements, they go around the outside of the perimeter, which are usable for us, and as well for access for any of the neighbors. They can come down from the top side from HRN's property, or they can come from the bottom side on their own property. And it does divide half where the utility easements are ingress and egress. They have access to their properties on the utility and egress easements. The only thing I would have to say is I started this way before 2020, and I've been through a lot of planners, a lot of couple of CAOs. If we really want to develop Trinity County or Weaverville, we need to move it in a faster fashion. Nothing to do with the new crew that's here, but this has taken a long time. I've had engineers quit on me. We've been through quite a bit just trying to get the county to work with us. And in 2019, October, Kim Hunter said she could have it done in 2019, December 31st for our government, but not for a private party. It seems that if we're going to try to make things move along and we get housing or new development, stores of such, we need to move in a little faster fashion. Otherwise, I think that studies that have been done on it, if I knew the general plan was going to move so fast, I probably would have held off and waited because it was 100,000 in studies. If I'd have known they were pushing forward so swell, if the project was going to take so long, I may have waited for the general plan and got it for nothing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. This time I'd like to open it up for public comment.
Good evening. I'm Sherry White, Executive Director of Human Response Network, also known as HRN. I want you to know that HRN does support this project. However, I have a few comments I would like to address to the commission on. On October 26th, Skylar responded to my letter that I sent to her about the fence, and she stated that this would come forward tonight with a recommendation that if approved, a provision requiring that it come back to the Planning Commission later would be included. HRN is concerned that this idea is only included as an option rather than a requirement. Our primary concern is maintaining the safety and privacy of those people we place in our transitional housing units adjacent to the project site. The HRN shelter and transitional housing facility we are concerned about are described on page 32 in the special housing needs section of the housing element. Objective 6 on page 83 notes that emergency housing and transitional housing are identified priorities of social service providers in the county. While we recognize the need for more housing options in the county, which is desperately needed, we do not want to see this need met in a way that may adversely impact our special needs housing next door to this property. While staff report states that the project site was identified in the housing element as adequate for multifamily housing, this was only done by a county staff and a housing cooperative. The project site is not actually included or evaluated in the vacant land inventory in Appendix 1. Goal number 4 in the Weaverville Community Plan is to, quote, emphasize and retain existing neighborhood characteristics, quote, and calls for, quote, establishing density limits compatible with the character of existing neighborhoods, end quote. While there are multifamily designated parcels in the project area, the predominant designations are for lower density residential. HRN would approve this rezone if the need for security fencing was called out the need for security fencing called out in our comment letter was addressed. To ensure this happens, we would like to see the commission approve alternative 1 identified in the staff report with the following change. Item 1B, change the end of this section from, quote, with or without a plan review overlay on APN, end quote, to, quote, with a plan review overlay on APN 024-510-002 as provided for in County Code Section 17.35.070, end quotes. This approach allows HRN and the commission to discuss fencing needs in the future while letting the current proposal be approved. An added benefit is ensures that other concerned residents on low density parcels in the area will still have a chance to participate in decisions about their neighborhoods in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other comments from the floor?
Good evening. My name is Bob Simmons. I own, my family owns property just to the north of this project, proposed project. Our concern primarily is access to our centerpiece, which is essentially landlocked at this point. There is the right of way that Ms. Fisher mentioned within that, around the perimeter of that, of Dana's property. That right of way can be mitigated through abandonment. That's not an issue with us. We just want to maintain our section so we can get into our property. And Ms. Fisher also, or Dana did, one of them, that we could go through our own property. That piece along our one piece is only 80 feet wide. Building a road through there would essentially make that a useless piece of property. And with the right of way actually being deeded on Mr. Ryan's side is necessary for us to access that. From the top side, like you were saying, it's not feasible in our mind.
Mr. Simmons, is the right of way you're talking about on wrong road? Is that the easement that you're expecting?
That's actually our driveway into our other piece,
Thank you.
which is where my daughter lives and my sister lives on the front piece. As far as the transportation's comment on there's no significant impact, I would contest that. I mean, you're talking, if it's a possibility of 90 units, there's 180 people. Theoretically, there's foot traffic it's going to quadruple down that road to the bus stop that's at the highway. The bus doesn't go up there. To me, that doesn't seem safe to me with that much increased traffic. The only other issue I would have is that many units with the noise and the lights and the traffic is going to make our property less valuable. And we're not interested in selling at this point, but at some point we will, and that's going to have an effect. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other comments from the floor? Is there any comments on Zoom?
Can I ask one more technical question for Skylar?
Okay, at this time, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission. Commissioners?
Skylar, I had one quick, more technical question. I'm sorry. So if the commission adopted this with the requirement that a plan review be done, could that plan review consider transportation, such as adding a sidewalk from the development out to 299, or is it plan review only limited to the property itself?
So it's my understanding that it would be just on the subject property.
So we wouldn't have any future option to address transportation issues if we don't address them now?
As it pertains to like the increased traffic, I
Yeah,
would-
kids walking to the school bus, that was one of the comment letters. So, if you have, 90 units, 90 families, and you have a bunch of kids walking in the dark out to get on the bus, I'm just trying to figure out what the window of opportunity is to address that issue. It's like right now, that's it.
So there doesn't necessarily, like if a decision could be that there isn't adequate discussion or mitigation to the transportation, if that's a decision. And so an option could be, okay, we don't feel comfortable recommending the document right now. Take another look at the transportation impacts and discussion.
Okay, thank you for that. I think as far as transportation goes, certainly I don't think we want to make anybody build sidewalks down property lines that aren't theirs. That should be, stopped at property line. It is important that we make them develop to the street, but not other people's parcels or other people's easements. Certainly for the school bus, it would not be a big task for the school bus to actually just drive up Ransom Road, make a turnaround at Boudreaux, and pick up kids at the corner of Ransom and Boudreaux. I used to live on that street. I agree that they shouldn't be on the highway, but they drive up every rural road in our county. So that certainly can be mitigated very easily. I am concerned that we're calling this a 90-unit development without actual knowledge of what is developable and what isn't. That's a big headline in the paper that may not be true. I don't see how you can say that and not know what you can actually develop.
Would you like a motion?
I would.
Okay. So I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Supervisors, based on findings in support, adopt the CEQA determination of a mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program with the amended mitigation measure by 01. Amend the zoning district for the property from single-family residential low density to multifamily district, and amend general plan designation for the property from single-family residential low density to multifamily residential high density with a plan review. Approve applications P-20-20 and P-21-33. And also add the condition that, and this is based on the language in the staff report, no building permit or other construction permit shall be issued until review and approval of preliminary and final site plans by the Planning Commission.
I'll second that motion.
And that's for discussion.
Yep. So I'm going to bring it back to the commission for discussion now. I have, a little issue. I'll second that motion, but with issue with the measure by 01. I'm on every construction site north of Sacramento, and not once, and I'm talking state, federal, private, you name it, not once have I ever seen anybody have to pressure wash their vehicles.
Forest Service does it all the time for fires. For the rigs.
Maybe for Forest Service, but certainly not for construction. I've never seen it. And I would invite you to go to any construction site in this county, Shasta County, City of Redding, Tehama County, Butte County, any county. You're not going to see it. It doesn't happen. So how they could, how we want to force this guy to do that, I think that's, I can agree with some of the things in Bio 1, but to wash down vehicles as they come in and come off, pressure wash, it does not happen.
I agree.
Ever, anywhere. It maybe the Forest Service does it, but man, I'd argue that one too during fire.
It is true though, Bill, that they do over here on our end of the county, because we don't have CAL FIRE over here. It's Forest Service. And when you move when you move a piece of, it's like this right here. The church out there, right next door to the church is a Forest Service. And right across the street is the Forest Service guard station in Ruth. And technically, when I drive from the church through the back gate or through the fence in the back gate over there, technically I'm supposed to pressure wash my my vehicle. But it was like, but I do agree with you 100% that it was like that. It's I think it's a bit excessive because I think that the stuff going on with Forest Service is a bit excessive.
Well, I mean, I'm going to just point out the fact that we did a $29 million build in the industrial park last year. Nobody washed a vehicle. We just built a jail, $25 million build. Nobody washed a vehicle. That's point of fact. So again, I think that's, just erroneous. I can't, I can't agree with that.
It's burdensome to the
It
applicant.
is.
I agree.
And it slows a project and construction to a grind. It's just ridiculous.
If I may, Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So if every vehicle needs to be washed off with a hose versus with a pressure washer, is that what the conversation is? A hose versus a pressure washer?
No, I
But
believe
it's
it's just
established-
washed down, period.
So it's either washed down, but I mean either, so it's pressure washed or washed down with, the assumption is a hose, right? Is that
I
clear?
think it's more containment. If you read the extra language that was added, it's that, wastewater shall be contained by a wash system. So it's more that you don't just spray it down and leave the stuff there. You actually have to contain what you wash off so that it's not spread somewhere else. If you read the difference in language between the original bio
Right.
one and the
Hmm.
proposed.
Well, I think
Containing-
Sweepy covers all of this stuff during construction. So it's not something that the Forest Service or CAL FIRE needs to rule over. I mean, he's going to have a sweepy plan for his construction project. He'll have to follow those things that contain dirt, contain water, and that'll cover him. And that's what every project has to follow.
So I'm willing to amend my motion. Again, it was for discussion. To change the language to be without bio one as amended. But then I do have, if the seconder agrees with that, I do have other discussion.
I'll second that.
So I just wanted to say, so I did go out to the site, and I was impressed by how much it's just a bowl. It's flat ground surrounded by really steep kind of periphery on three sides that to me really has some limitations due to topography. Not just, the potential right-of-way limitations. I think the residents and the adjacent landowners have some valid concerns about transportation and, moving kids around and the need to address those right-of-way issues. So that's why I wanted to be clearer by adding that extra condition that's really specifying that, there's no building permit or other construction permit until specifically the Planning Commission has reviewed the preliminary and the final site plans. So I'm hoping that the community will think about this and come back with specific suggestions once the right-of-way is identified and the layout is provided, and we can really look at this.
No, I agree. With that,
Is this such where, if we rezone this, would a 90 dwelling apartment complex, would that just fall within the zoning without that additional amendment and not have to come before the Planning Commission with this multi family type of zoning?
So apartment complexes are allowed in the R3 zoning, but something that I was discussing with SHN about this project in particular is due to the minimum height requirement right now for R3. I was pulling up my zoning book to get the exact height. I think it's about 25 feet. You can't really even do 3-story structures. So right now, it's not expected that we can even do that maximum build out because of that. Amending that section of the ordinance, though has been an ongoing discussion. And with the original project that was discussed in the housing element that isn't going forward anymore, it was discussed that when the rezone happened and those developments were identified, that with that would come an amendment request of that height requirement. But that sort of changed. So I don't really believe that 90 units are possible at this point. But it was really just like looking at, even if we were able to develop higher over more space, what would the impacts of that be?
Thank you for that. I had a couple quick questions for you, Ms. Fisher. The first one is parking. When units are decided how many are going to go on here, how many parking spots are required on the parcel per unit?
I am currently pulling up our parking ordinance. So I don't know if you wanted to load up another question while I
Yep.
did that or.
And the next thing is, during plan review, will drainage be addressed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And you can get back to me on that. I'm not in a hurry. I'm just curious to make sure that whatever impact this has is not going to spread out onto neighboring roads or Ransom Road.
Okay, so I have the parking section of our ordinance up, 17.30.090 off-street parking requirements. So for 3 or more dwelling units, 2 parking spaces per unit with a maximum credit of 0.75 per dwelling unit for enclosed garages, and parking for senior housing, or I guess that doesn't apply. So that's the general.
2 per. Yep. Okay, I think that's all I have. Commissioners, is there any other questions or comments on this motion? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and bring it. You're going to have to hold up there for a second, Mr. Ryan. At this point, I'd like to bring it to a full vote. So need a roll call.
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you, 5-0.
Do you need my written language for that added condition?
You will.
That could be helpful.
Yeah. You're gonna. Thank you for your application. Good luck with your project. We look forward to seeing what you're going to develop. Thank you.
I'm back.
Hey. Okay, item 3 on the agenda is a major lot line adjustment, P-22-19, a request for a major lot line adjustment. The project includes 1531-1401-1173 Lewiston Road, Lewiston. APNs 025-250-022, 025-520-015, 025-520-010. Applicant S. White, planner S. Fisher. This time I'd like to take it to Ms. Fisher for a review.
Thank you, Planning Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public in the audience and on Zoom. I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing P-22-19, which is a major lot line adjustment application. And so typically, lot line adjustments don't come to the Planning Commission, but over the review of this application, it was determined that it qualified as a major lot line adjustment. And because of that, since there was some, due to staff wanting to request a direction from the Planning Commission, we saw it fit to bring it to this meeting to try to keep the project moving along. So this application was submitted in September of 2022. And shortly after was routed for comments, as we typically do for our projects. For lot line adjustment and other map subdivision applications, a lot of that review is performed by our county surveyor to make sure that all the calculations are correct, that the map makes sense, and that generally the exhibits are consistent with the Subdivision Map Act and our local subdivision ordinance. Over the course of her review, she found that she wanted more clarification for the legal access, to parcel C in the lot line adjustment exhibit, as well as legal creation concerns. So a request was made for the surveyor who was listed on the exhibit. She emailed him directly and said, can you please give me this information? And that was, I think, on a Thursday. So the following week, the applicant, Mr. White, contacted me. He said, hey, the 30-day period for application review has elapsed. Can we set up a site visit? So that's when it was realized that there was a bit of a disconnect. So for the in the application, we have an agent's authorization form. So while the surveyor listed on the exhibit was the surveyor who prepared the exhibit, he wasn't an agent for the project. So correspondence should have gone through the applicant, and we realized he wasn't CC'd. And because of that, the applicant wasn't made aware of this request until after that 30 days after the initial application submission. Even so, staff is finding a bit of difficulty working with the county surveyor in adequately processing this application without the requested information. So we wanted to bring it to the Planning Commission to see if you had any advice on the completeness of the application, whether it is complete because that 30-day window has expired, or if it should still be determined incomplete. Also, since this is brought to you and it is a major lot line adjustment, it is at your discretion to make a determination of approval or denial of the application as well. And so if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any questions for staff?
So if the application isn't approved, is there still a question about access to that lot C? I mean, how does this address that? I mean, the approval of the application. In other words, is it still a question that's out there if this application never came in?
Of whether or not parcel C was legally
No,
created or
not legally created, but access to it.
So we did have a member of the public come in last week or the week before and bring a document and say, oh, I think this is proof of access to the parcel, but I haven't been able to review that yet.
No.
So no, it wouldn't solve that issue.
That is the issue.
Correct.
Yeah. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Fisher. At this time, I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Ms. Fisher, Skylar, is this your pen that you left up here?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I didn't want to just knock it to the floor.
Please state your name.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Scott White. I live at 1531 Lewiston Road. My wife who's here with me tonight and I are the applicants for this project. Hang on just a second. I've got a lot of stuff here. I want to make it easy for us. We are the project applicants for this. I am also the authorized agent to speak on behalf of the Boger Trust. That is what was referred to as Parcel C. I have lived in Trinity County since 1994. We have lived on the subject property, the 1531 Lewiston Road, since 2002. I'm going to talk about a lot of county code sections tonight, so I thought it would be helpful for the commission. I'll go through those quickly so that you can follow along, circle them if you would wish to do so. I had referred to the subdivision ordinance and the zoning ordinance. The numbering is different than it's in the county code, although they're exactly the same. I'm going to refer to the numbers in county code because that is what you have. The 17 number series is the zoning ordinance. The 16 number series is the subdivision ordinance. I will be referring to 17.30E, 17.30E.020, 17.30E.020C, 0.030A, 0.030E, 0.030G, 0.040A. From the subdivision ordinance, 16.32, 16.32.010, 16.32.040. Sections in the subdivision ordinance I will be referring to that were not provided by county staff are 16.08.040, 16.48, and 16.48.01. There's two things that, and I appreciate what Skylar had to say. And by the way, I have no issues with Skylar. 25 years ago, I was sitting where she's sitting. So I understand what it is to be a new planner under a lot of pressure. But in her staff report, there are two things that I think are very critical. One, the surveyor who prepared the map is not an authorized agent. He has no authority to act on our behalf. So the county surveyor contacting him rather than going to Skylar as her request for comments required is moot. It doesn't make any difference. Beyond that, she made a comment in her staff report about what I said that is actually not accurate, and I'd like to correct that. The last sentence in the second paragraph reads, due to not being contacted until after the 30-day window, the applicant states that the requested information is not required to process the lot line adjustment as the application should be deemed complete. That is not what I said. What I stated is the application is complete by action of county ordinance. And again, I don't have any issue with Skylar. There's one more thing I'd like to refer to, and that was a Trinity County Board of Supervisors item 1.2 from April 29th, 2022, modify interim deputy director of building and planning. This waived the requirement for the planning director to have any education in planning or the 5 years to be planning director. The staff report said there are no staff currently qualified in the county for the position. They put the employee in that position in the role of administrator to oversight of contracts, monitor workflow, and fiscal management. No planning experience and no expectation by the board of supervisors that he do any planning. So what's happened is the board of supervisors have set us all up for failure. They've set Ed up for failure, Skylar, me, you, because we don't have anybody in planning that has any experience. I bring that up because it's important. I have bachelor's degrees in business and economics. I graduated with honors in both. I have a master's degree, but I did not get the degree. I didn't finish my thesis in rural and town planning. I have 27 years of land use and transportation planning experience. 6+ of those years at Trinity County, 20+ at Caltrans District 2, 18 years of which I was a supervisor. I managed numerous consultant contracts as well as both short and long range planning studies. I have won both personal and project level awards. I have participated in the development of staff level training materials, testing materials, and job specifications. And I bring that to your attention, not to promote myself, but to simply explain that I've been out there, I've done that. I have done planning work in all 7 of the counties in Northeastern California. From the start of this project, I have asked the county repeatedly, I want to follow all of the rules. I said, I want to make this easy on county staff. I work for the county. I know what it's like to be working for a small staff. The project will either keep people the same or make them better off. Our plans have been on hold now for over 9 months because of the inability of the county to follow the rules. Not all of that is planning. Some of that is another unit that's not before you tonight. Here's the chronology from a basic chronology of what we've done. We purchased the parcel next door in the summer of 2021. In March of 2022, I met with Lisa Lozier. She said, this is a great project. The application was ready at the time. I went through a couple of comments that those were actually added into the review that I gave you for the project. And she said, well, why don't you talk to this one other county department? That was a disaster. And that's not before you tonight. That's a different issue. 9 months to get here. At August 9th, we had a meeting at planning. We agreed to a process to move forward, and we all agreed we would follow the regulations, which is always what I've asked to do throughout this project. On September 7th, I met with Skylar to review the lot line application, and she said, quote, this is the most complete lot line adjustment she's ever seen. Thank you, Skylar. I appreciated that for a lot of hard work. September 8th, I submitted the lot line adjustment, paid the fees, and the 30-day period began. September 8th, I submitted a DG permit application to DOT, prepared it. They did not take my fees and said it was not required. On September 20th, I submitted building permit applications for a retaining wall and a barn I want to build. On October 7th, the 30-day time limit for decision on complete and not complete zoning ordinance section 17.30E.020.c. I had no communication from Ed, who was the only one authorized to determine complete, incomplete, and he would only do so to me. I had no communication. On that day, the 15-day limit for agencies to submit comments begins, subdivision ordinance 16.32.040. On October 11th, I sent an email to Skylar. She made some reference to that, saying the application is complete. When can we do the site visit? I forwarded that email again to her on October 11th, saying, when can we do that? She sent an email back to me that day with the county surveyor's comments, and the allusion was the application was not complete. I immediately sent an email to Ed Presley, provided him with section 17.30E.020.c, and informed him the application is complete by power of county ordinance. At that point, he said back to me, you must go to the planning commission. On October 21st, the 15-day period for agency comments to submit their comments ended. On October 21st, I sent a letter to Ed regarding the ordinance requirements and the application being deemed complete, and reiterated my desire to continue to try to work with staff. On October 24th, I visited planning. I was informed that the 15-day routing required by ordinance did not occur. On November 1st, I attended the board supervisors meeting during public comment and expressed my frustrations with the planning division. And now I'm here tonight. As you know, the determination of complete is an enormous milestone in the development of a project. There's obviously disagreement here tonight. Planning staff doesn't feel it's happened. I feel it has. So what is the process? And I'm going to try to be quick to deal with this, but it is very, very important. So application processing, how it works, and how is complete determined. The subdivision ordinance, it only addresses the how and who of complete for maps. It doesn't have anything to do with complete for the application other than the map. That's chapter 16.32, the procedure for lot line adjustments. 16.08.040 defines complete relative to the adequacy of maps. The guidance listed in this section on complete that's allowed to be reviewed is subdivision improvement standards, which actually don't apply because they only apply to section 16.48.010, all divisions of land. A lot line adjustment is not a division. Those don't apply. This title, which is 16.32, which is the lot line adjustment section, and then the subdivision map act, which is specifically government code section 66412D that covers lot line adjustments. So what's the bottom line? The range of issues that you're allowed to look at by law are very, very narrow. It should also be noted that for a lot line adjustment, map is really a misnomer. It should be called a drawing or depiction, since a map cannot be required by law for a lot line adjustment. Also, just remember that nothing in the subdivision ordinance addresses complete of an application. Now we go to the zoning ordinance, which is the who, how, and when of determining the application itself is complete. This is where the decision happens. Section 17.30E is the procedure for processing applications. Section 17.30E.020 is the procedure for determining whether an application is complete or not complete. Section 17.30E.020.c lays out the time period, 30 days, and requirements for the planning director to issue a decision to the applicant. The clock starts at submittal and payment of fees according to the ordinance. There's three things that could happen, one of the three. The application is deemed complete and the planning director notifies the applicant of such. The application is not complete and the application,
Thank you, Mr.
Application.
White.
pardon?
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. White.
Chairman, I believe I should have more time to address this.
We've read your report, we've looked at your documents, and we've heard you, and that's the time allotted. So we thank you for that.
I'm
And,
disappointed because you didn't have all the information I have here tonight. I believe as a paying applicant before the county. I also was informed by one of the commissioners before this meeting, an applicant was allowed as much time as needed to cover a project. So I'm disappointed that the commission is not upholding what one of the commissioners told me. That's disappointing to me.
Thank you.
I've spent a lot of money and time, and it's unfortunate that you won't let me talk, but you give staff unlimited time. That's not fair.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Is there any comment from the floor? Is there any comment from Zoom? Okay, at this time, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion and a motion.
Well, for discussion purposes, I'll make a recommendation that the planning commission find applicant P-22-19 complete.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Let Todd.
Commissioner Heaton, do you second that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll bring it back for discussion. Feel free, commissioners.
Well, I guess my comment is, I mean, what he's requesting is very logical. You know, he wants to address the flag lot. He wants to help his neighbor who, you know, finds that part of his house is over the property line. So I commend him for what he's trying to do. And I understand the technicality that, you know, the staff really did not do what they needed to do within the time frame. So I wish that there was a confirmation of legal access to parcel C, and I wish there was documentation of vesting deeds to the surveyor. I hope that will be provided, but I agree that this is complete.
I think I agree with that. I think that maybe we could add that language into this approval that he provides that prior to a final.
You want to ask the maker of the motion?
Can you clarify what we are asking to put into this motion?
That he provides the easement information, and what was the other one, Carol?
So provide confirmation of legal access to parcel C and provide documentation of the vesting deeds to the county surveyor.
Yep, that seems reasonable and adequate. I'll agree to add that to the motion.
Do I have a second?
No, I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay, I'd like to take a vote.
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you, 5-0.
May I ask a question? Repeat that. I don't know what happened.
Sure. Can you give him that information?
Commissioner McIntosh recommended that the Planning Commission find the application P-2219 complete and to provide confirmation of legal access to parcel C and the vesting deeds to the properties,
To the county surveyor.
to the county surveyor.
Thank you.
Huh?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good luck on your project. Okay, moving on to item number 5, annual initial variance, CCV-22-40. A request for an initial cannabis cultivation variance.
We skip item 4.
Yes, I did. Because it was memorandum. I'm just moving through this. Sorry about that. So item 4. Okay, so item 4 is memorandum, and looks like we're gonna appeal for a planning director's decision to approve commercial cannabis cultivation license CCL 651 pursuant to Trinity County Code, section 17.34.110A. The project parcel is located at 1598 Indian Creek Road, Douglas City, APN 015-180-045. Applicant Samai Sabankaya, and I am sorry for butchering that name. Planner S. Fisher. Ms. Fisher?
Thank you, Planning Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public here in the audience and on Zoom. I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing P-22-29, which is an appeal of the director's decision to approve commercial cannabis license 651. So this one's going to be kind of short and sweet. So and I even spoke to the cannabis division about this today to make sure we were all on the same page on where the evaluation of this CCL is in regards to this appeal and the concerns brought up by the appellant in regards to that CCL. And so the cannabis division originally asked for a continuation to that December 8th, 2022 planning commission date because they're currently working with other responsible agencies to fully be able to evaluate each of the concerns brought up as they relate to these different jurisdictions, as well as wanting to check out the site and verify these concerns brought up as well. But I would like to amend the recommended continuance date. The licensee who's being appealed, he came up last week to speak to the item from Southern California and then got here and the meeting was canceled. And so the licensee is requesting that since December 8th is kind of near the holiday season, that it be continued further to January 12th. So those are the two dates. And I spoke to the cannabis division about this, whether or not they had any concerns with this continuance date. And they stated that if anything, it gives them more time to review, but ultimately at your discretion. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Is there any questions for staff? Thank you. This time, I'd like to open it up to comments from the applicant on Zoom, possibly.
Are you speaking of the appellant or the license applicant?
Yeah, the appellant.
Yes, Gary Himmelstein representing the appellants. Obviously, if they need more time to do their job, we don't object to that. We do believe this is a simple and straightforward matter. The code section 17.43.060C expressly requires that for cannabis cultivation, water needs to be sourced on site from a well or surface water rain catchment system. And it says the cultivation of cannabis shall not utilize water that's been illegally diverted. And if water is hauled in, it has to be for an emergency defined as a sudden unexpected occurrence. We have submitted literally dozens of photos and videos of water truck deliveries to this site, sometimes more than once a day during the hot season. And I don't know how that can be explained away, but if the staff feels they need more time to look into it, so be it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, well, at this time, I'd like to open it up to public comment. Is there anybody in the room or on Zoom?
Yeah, hey, how you doing? My name's Joseph Harrier. I'm actually on the application as well with Skylar Douglas. I think he's having some difficulty getting on here. We both came up on Thursday for the last meeting to be told that it wasn't going to happen, and then came back a couple days ago, and then we're just notified yesterday that this was happening today. So we both came on Zoom, but this is not how, this matters a lot to us. So we're kind of fighting for our lives here. And we want to make sure that we approach you guys completely set up with all the evidence and all the people that we have that want to speak on our behalf. So if the 8th works for you guys, it works for us. I'll waiting to see if Skylar has anything else to bring up here, but that's what my 2 cents are. Thank you guys.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other comments on Zoom? Okay, at this time, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission.
So I'm unsure. So are there multiple applicants and one applicant said the 12th is okay?
So first, I don't think it's written. So there's 2 Skylars. So there is a Skylar. So there was a reference to a Skylar. There's Skylar and Joe on the CCL. So I wanted to say that first because it is a point of confusion in the office sometimes. But yes, so when I last heard from Skylar, there was the request from the 12th, but I'm sure cannabis staff, and I just reached out to the acting director to see if he has comment on it, but I'm sure the 8th works if we want to continue it to that date.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we continue item number, the appeal of the director's decision P-22-29 to December 8th, 2022.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Barrett seconds. We'll bring it back for discussion. Is there any discussion? The only thing I would say is I'm a bit confused because you're saying the 8th is okay, but you said the applicant called and said that they would rather wait till the holidays were over and have it on the 12th. So which is it?
That was the request made, but if it is desired to be on the 8th, I was just saying it's okay for like county staff review. Like we will make the 8th work. But last time I heard from cannabis admin staff, the request was for January 12th. So I said that I would bring it up and I would state it. So if currently, like given in public comment was that the 8th is good, then the 8th is good.
Works for me. Okay. I'd like to
Roll call.
roll call.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
You 5-0. A motion to continue the appeal to December 8th, 2022.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to item 5. Annual initial variance CCV-22-40. A request for an initial cannabis cultivation variance from a neighboring residence pursuant to Trinity County Code Section 17.43.050A8. The project is located at 2450 Lewiston Road, Lewiston, APN 025-260-011. Applicant D. DeVore, planner S. Fisher. This time I'd like to take it to planner Ms. Fisher.
Thank you, Planning Commission Chair, Commissioners, and members of the audience, or members of the public in the audience and on Zoom. I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing CCV number 22-40. As Chair Sharp stated, this project is located off Lewiston Road in Lewiston. The zoning district is rural residential with a 5-acre minimum, and the general plan designation is rural residential. So this is one of the cultivations that have been identified as needing a variance based on staff's relook at the definition of cultivation in our county code to not just include like flower, but also processing, harvesting, and other cultivation uses. Because of that, one of their structures was flagged in site inspections and the evaluation of their Appendix C document this year as needing a variance from APN 025-260-037. So to just kind of go over the site and what's happening for the proposed cultivation project. So the cultivation includes 9,624 square feet of mature canopy, a 10 by 40 area for immature planting, a 25 by 50 structure dedicated to processing, harvest storage, and an admin hold. And there was clarification that immature plants were purchased offsite and then moved to the site for that immature plant area. So the newest cultivation structure is a 25 by 50 structure and was developed in 2020. Also on the site, but not included in the cultivation area, is an agricultural, chemical, and pesticide storage in the garage, a domestic well, and a well for cannabis irrigation. So part of the evaluation of a commercial cannabis cultivation variance is using variance criteria found in section 17.31 of our zoning ordinance. So the first criteria is whether or not there is a special privilege in granting this variance. So in looking at the site, both on Google Earth, and I had the privilege to check out the site last week, last Thursday, there are some topographic constraints to moving the cultivation area to be outside of the 350-foot residential setback. Primarily, there are portions of the parcel that are fairly steep and would be very difficult to develop on. In addition, a portion of the Trinity River runs through the parcel, and there are required water setbacks on top of the flood hazard overlay on that section. When I was on the site, the applicant pointed out this other flat area, and he said, oh, well, this looks like a flat area, and it is a flat area, but it's actually where the leach line is. So we were told by building that we can't build here. So that's like further, they were stating, you know, we're trying to develop this in the best way possible. You know, they stated that they've talked to their neighbor about it, and there hasn't been issues so far, given the location of that structure and proximity to their residence. The granting of the variance would not grant a use variance. The proposed use is consistent with what's allowed in the rural residential zoning district. We don't believe staff hasn't found within the review that there would be a disservice permitted through if this granting of the variance went through. There hasn't been any comments submitted by the neighbor that is impacted by this variance request, stating that they are against or for. There, at the time of writing the staff report, there was one comment submitted by a neighbor to the south of the project property, citing concerns of odor or transportation impacts. But given the location of the parcel, of that parcel where the comment came from and where the location of the cultivation is, staff doesn't believe that there would be transportation or odor concerns to that parcel if this license were to be granted through the approval of this variance. In addition, this variance was not found to be in conflict with the general plan or any specific plans, nor the parcel in an RD1 overlay district. So since the project is in Lewiston, I spent some time to verify that it is not in an established opt-out zone. And so I attached the ordinance to verify that it is not in an opt-out, to clarify the use variance prohibited question further. Based on staff review of the project, and I feel like I keep referencing them, but I've been doing a lot of work with cannabis environmental compliance to make sure that we're on the same page with this environmental review aspect in conjunction with the license itself processing. And it's determined that for this variance, it would qualify for a CEQA exemption based on section 15061B3, as it's not found that the granting of this variance would create a new impact that could be potentially significant on the environment. And so given that, planning staff recommends that the Planning Commission move to adopt a CEQA determination that the project is exempt per section 15061B3. And to adopt the resolution subject to the conditions of approval. But I do request that the resolution be amended, because I was reviewing this right as I came over and I saw typos, which is always very disappointing. So the recommended amendment to that is to change the applicant name in the whereas section to this applicant. So I get for using templates. And I think that's it for this one. Oh, and to change the date that it was heard. So basically just changing that preamble section to reflect this application, which I can do. And that would be the amendment. So when taking a look at the structure and proximity to the residence, it was found to be about 225 feet. So that is the request to change the setback from being 350 to 225 feet from the residence on APN 025-260-037. And I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Is there any questions for staff? Okay. Thank you for that report.
Yes, I have one question, if I may, Chair.
Oh,
Go ahead, Mr.
Yes, and so yes, this is for Skylar. Has this project gone through the EIR and the CEQA process?
no, when I last talked to and I'm sorry for sitting. When I last talked to the cannabis division, I do not believe that this project has had their compliance memo noticed yet.
Okay, and this variance would give them permission to go through the CEQA, through this process. It's not granting them a license without that document. Is that correct?
Right, yeah, they would still, and I said compliance memo, that's the internal review of the environmental document, the Appendix C. So yes, so this, the determination in it is strictly to the variance, and the Appendix C would still need to be noticed publicly and adopted in order for the license to be issued.
Okay, thank you.
Is that typically how it's done? Variance before the CEQA process and the EIR?
So this has been an internal discussion because it feels like chicken or the egg type of thing. Because on the one hand, cannabis staff, they want the variance to go through before, because they find that it's important that if a license is going to be issued or the document, the Appendix C be noticed, that they first want to make sure that if the cultivation is within the 350 feet, the neighbor's fine with it. But because the license and the environmental document have been posted at the same time, it's kind of become like, okay, what comes first, the environmental document being posted or the variance? Which, based on conversations that I actually had with staff today, that's something that's kind of being updated to kind of capture that concern of like, okay, what if we had the environmental document first? Because part of that is the variance discussion, and then we bring the variance too. So it makes a little bit more sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Is there any other questions for staff? Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
I'm sorry, if I may, based on our site inspection, there were a few words exchanged, and I was hoping to maybe I meant to do it in the presentation earlier, I apologize, but just for Brown Act reasons, I was hoping to kind of record what was said into the record.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to state that last Thursday, I went on site with Commissioners Fall and Commissioner Heaton to check out the property, and we were joined by the licensee. And so during that site inspection, there was, okay, sorry, I got it. So there was discussion on the harvest and processing shop that was the concern for the variance, as well as discussion on the fact that the garden area of the cultivation is outside of the variance. That this is where that leach field conversation came from that I alluded to earlier. Discussions on wanting to maintain a turnaround spot in that flat area. Additional discussion regarding the requirements for variances having to do with topography, shape, or size. The use of the river on the property by the applicant's neighbors, showing good neighborship. Inconsistent messaging on the ordinance, confusion that the ordinance requirements have changed, which I wanted to clarify for that cultivation definition. I don't believe it's changed. I think that staff didn't look closely enough at it, that it was these, not just cultivation in the term of growing flower, but also in processing, harvesting, and et cetera. And that was the main takeaways. So thank you.
Thank you for that report.
I just want to add, and the applicant also provided information that they've had their license for approximately 5 years prior to this. So
Thank you.
so everybody's on the same information plane.
Thank you. For
Correct. And I would like to add to it as well. Bella had given me a Google directions to get there and typed in a certain thing, and it took me to her neighbor's house, took me to the neighbor's house, which with the neighbor that is with the variance is required for. And I had his name is Robert. He never told me his last name. It could be Brad. I don't know. But I had a conversation with him, and I said, what do you think about your neighbors and their grow and all of that stuff? And he says, I absolutely love my neighbors. He said, in fact, I eat supper at their house regularly, and my father, who had the property before them, and he said they have an excellent relationship. And he says he doesn't have a problem, and he honestly hated to see him lose it if that was the case. But he was in perfect agreement with the growth. And so I was going to bring that up when we had our discussion, but since we were discussing all the Brown Act stuff, I wanted to share that with y'all as well of what I discovered.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other questions for staff? Okay, at this time, I'm going to bring it back to the floor and the applicant.
Hello, commissioners and staff. My name is Danielle DeBoer. Trinity has been my home for over 12 years now, and my property is something that I'm very proud of. So I'm here today requesting a variance for my home and business in Lewiston. The property has been licensed for over 5 years now, and I've never had a complaint that I'm aware of. It was also previously CEQA exempt prior to the TAA ruling. It's a beautiful, clean, well-designed property that I've worked tirelessly for over the past few years. Our garden footprint is outside of that 350-foot setback, and I've never moved it. So I never needed a variance before, but I understand that the wording and definition of cultivation has changed with the county ordinance, and now all structures involved in cultivating process also have to be outside of that setback. So that's why I'm here asking for variance so that I can stay in compliance with all the ever evolving regulations of the county. I've always been friendly and on good terms with my neighbor who that setback is from. They've never had an issue with me cultivating. Bert, Robert's father, he passed away. He was a loving soul. Robert and Bert's wife, Tracy, now live there and take care of the property, and they are in favor of me being granted this variance. Our 24 by 36 double garage is our processing and harvest storage building, and it's been on the approved site map since the property was first licensed. It was built and permitted at the same time as my residence in August of 1992. We previously dried our flower in this building, but we decided to build a separate shop to dry in as we were allowed to under our CEQA exemption while we still were CEQA exempt. We built the metal shop next to it in 2020 as we wanted to separate that drying area from where we stored our product. We did so under the guidance of the building department, who stated that it was the only spot on the property that we could build it without disturbing and rebuilding the property dramatically. And I understand that, it's my responsibility to stay up to date on the rules and do my due diligence on all the county ordinance changes. But at the time, I was under the impression that the setback was still measured from the garden edge to the nearest neighbor residential dwelling. So the building was permitted and designed based off of those reasonings. We also had an electrical upgrade from TPUD in 2021. They added a new power pole and a transformer just feet away from that new building as to not disturb too much land. Everything is finalized and up to code through the building department for that. The layout and the topography of my parcel doesn't allow me anywhere else to build a new structure without drastically altering my property. Also, the property was first enrolled in the water board in January of 2017. There was an existing well when I purchased the property that we used just for domestic use. We drilled an additional well in August of 2019 for our cultivation. That well is at a depth of 220 feet. I'm hoping to be granted this variance so I can just continue running my business. And also, I was told that my CEQA had been complete, but once, if I'm granted this variance, it would be posted concurrently with this for public review, just so you know my CEQA has been completed as well. So I hope I answered any questions you guys have. And thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comments. This time I'd like you to open up to public comment. Is there any on the floor? Any on Zoom? Please state your name.
Yes. Hi, my name is Cindy. I live in Lewiston on Lewiston Road. And I just want to say the property is just a little bit ways from me. And I've never realized that there was a garden there. So obviously it's been operated quietly and respectfully the past few years. So I'm hoping this variance is granted for them and they continue to be part of our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else on Zoom?
Veronica or David?
Hi, this is Veronica Kelly Albies from Douglas City. I really just want to speak to the word variance, and I want to thank Skylar for her definition, because I know there's been conversation over the last several meetings. The cannabis ordinance has parameters in several areas that allow an applicant the opportunity to apply for a variance. It is never guaranteed, and as we know, it's annual. Listening to the applicant, it sounds like that she has done everything that she can to make sure that she is a good business owner and respectful to her neighbors. But I do like the idea that the staff is learning the ordinance better and understanding what the variance is in regards to the cannabis ordinance. The ordinance does refer to Ordinance 315, Section 31. So I appreciate everybody that's working together to make this a successful business and industry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else on Zoom?
Don't say anything.
All right. At this time, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission for a motion.
Well, if none of the other commissioners will put a motion forth, I will go ahead and follow the staff's recommendations to move that this planning commission adopt the California Environmental Quality CEQA determination that the project is exempt per section 15061B3. And B, adopt a resolution, PC 2022-14, subject to Exhibit A, conditions of approval to reduce the 350-foot setback from 225, from 300, I'm sorry, I'm feeling under the weather. Let me repeat this. Conditions of approval to reduce the 350-foot setback to 225 feet from the residence on APN 025-260-3037.
I'll second that. Commissioners, feel free to discuss.
Well, I do want to thank the applicant for inviting us to visit because it really does help see where variances are appropriate because of the topography. I mean, you kind of go up a steep hill, down a steep hill to get to the cultivation area, and just past the cultivation area is a steep drop off to the Trinity River. There's just a small area of level ground that is appropriate for structures without major excavation. And it is mostly oak woodland, which is generally protected by the state. So you can't whack down a bunch of trees. So to me, that moves it into the category that there is a unique hardship due to topography, size, shape of the parcel.
Any other discussion? Okay. We have a roll call.
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner
Aye.
Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0 to grant your variance.
Good luck with your project. Okay, moving on to item 6, annual initial variance CCV-22-41, a request for an initial cannabis cultivation variance from neighboring residents pursuant to Trinity County Code Section 17.43.05A8. The project is located at 2761 Van Duzen Road, Mad River, APN 018-470-028. Applicant D and C Hicks. Planner S Fisher. This time I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Fisher.
Thank you, Planning Commission Chair, Commissioners, and member of the public in the audience and members on Zoom. I think I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing CCV 22-41. This project is located off of Van Duzen Road in Mad River. The parcel is zoned unclassified with a rural residential general plan designation. This is a setback variance request from 2 neighboring residences for CCL 113. So going into the site description of the parcel, and there is a site plan attached. The cultivation area includes an 80 by 50 support building dedicated to an admin hold, immature plant area, harvest area, and drying area, and additional storage space. And it also includes a mature cultivation area. Also on the site is a 27 by 32 structure for the storage of nutrients, tools, and equipment. There are multiple dwellings on site, a well and septic. And if you're looking at the site diagram and you're like, hold on a second, those support structures don't say what they do specifically. I did follow up with the applicant and I'm like, what are these support structures? Which one are the cultivation capture and which one aren't? So it's going to be the 80 by 50 is included in the cultivation area, and that 27 by 32 isn't, based on information that I have. So we'll just to go a little further into the site, it's quite, if you kind of look at the size of it, it has a very interesting shape and it is a larger parcel. So when I was first looking at it, I was like, well, there's a lot of what looks to be flat area that could be developed in. And also attached is a FEMA map, because I was looking at it and I said, well, that's interesting. That's the river, but I don't see my FEMA mapping that I usually see in our GIS, which tells me there's an overlay even over the river that says this is the river, it's the floodway. And then over that, the 100-year, the 500-year, the different flood hazard overlays. This river didn't have that, but I could plainly see that there was a river there. So I said, what the heck? So when you go on FEMA's website and you take a look at their FEMA Fermet, which shows different flood mapping across the country, this area is designated as it hasn't been mapped yet. So while it's not formally like flood hazard, typically a parcel which is in that flood hazard overlay is designated as such, rather than just having that visual representation if you were to look at it like on GIS or Parcel Viewer. But this one doesn't, because that a lot of that data relies on FEMA mapping, which doesn't exist. So when you take a closer look at it, you realize that even though it's not labeled, you can tell that there's the river and there's quite a lot of floodplain, which, although it's flat, the licensee wouldn't be able to develop in. There are provisions within the cultivation ordinance, which does allow cultivation within the 100-year floodplain under certain parameters, and if that cultivation is moved certain times of year. But generally, that isn't encouraged. It creates a lot of hardship and difficulty, and generally, we don't want to worry about like sediment or other runoff going into our floodways. So that portion of the parcel will be very difficult to relocate to or even develop new cultivation areas or other site developments on the parcel. On the other side of the parcel, more to the north, is where one of the support structures are. And it seems that there's a slope going up from that more flat area where the structure is. Taking a look at it, there is a little bit of flat area around, but it starts sloping up pretty quickly. And that's in the attachments, just through some Google Earth images to kind of zoom in and see what's going on there. So that would be another difficulty for moving the support structures to be outside of that area, or even moving the cultivation, the grow area specifically outside to not be on either the slope or the floodplain area that we've identified. So based on that, we believe that although the parcel is large, given the shape and what's available in the different sections of it, it would be quite difficult for them to move their cultivation areas to be outside of those setbacks. In addition, it's found that there would not be a use variance granted if the CCV were to be approved, nor no disservice to the adjacent property owners or general welfare of the community. Planning staff at this time has not received any comments on this project or concern from either of the residences that are within that 350-foot setback. And because of that, we don't believe that there is a concern of the proximity. In addition, this application is not found to be in conflict with the general plan or any specific plans, and this parcel is not located in an RD1 overlay zone. Due to that, staff finds that this application and the project request is exempt per the California Environmental Quality Act based on section 15061B3, which states that the granting of the variance itself we do not anticipate it creating any new significant environmental impacts. So based on that review of the site and of the requirements for issuing a variance, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a California Environmental Quality Act determination that the project is exempt per section 15061B3 and adopt resolution number PC-2215 with a similar request to amend the preamble and to have the final language include, actually, I did. Okay, cool. All right, that would be the only amendment, unless you want to clarify the feet in the resolution itself. But that would be subject to the Exhibit A conditions of approval to reduce 350 feet setback to 255 feet from the residence on APN 018-470-021, and to reduce the 350 feet setback to 250 feet from the residence on APN 018-470-011. I can answer any questions.
Do you have any sense of the elevation difference from what appears to be the floodplain and the cultivation site?
I do not have that information, but I can work with environmental compliance and see if that's included within their document or find it some other way.
Okay.
I was going to have the same suggestion. If, as part of their, their Appendix C, if they're submitting any kind of topographic information, if that could be, extracted from that and provided in the staff report, because same thing, I didn't have a chance to go out and look at this one. So if there's any way to provide that topographic information, because that is one of the criteria for a variance, that would be very, very useful.
All right, I'm writing it down for next time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Ms. Fisher. At this time, I'd like to have the applicant. Okay.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay. Please state your
My
name.
Diane Hicks.
Go ahead, Ms. Hicks.
For one, I would like to make a correction. We are agricultural. We are not unclassified residential.
Okay. Would you like to say anything else, Mrs. Hicks?
This is also Curtis Hicks. We'd also like to state that we are CEQA approved at this point.
Is there anything else you'd like to say? Mr. and Mrs. Hicks, would you like to say anything else? Okay, well, I'll take that as a no. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Hicks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there? Okay, at this time, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Is there any comment from the floor? Any comments on Zoom? Okay, at this time, I'm going to close it to public comment and bring it back to the commission for a motion. Do I have a motion? Okay, I'll make a motion. I'll motion that we approve the variance of staff recommendation. Yeah, I've got it. I'm just trying to think if we want to put in there. Well, I'll make a motion to adopt of California Environmental Quality Act CEQA determination that the project is exempt per section 15061 B3. B, adopt resolution PC 2022-15, subject to Exhibit A, conditions of approval to reduce and amend the 350 to 255 foot from the residence on APN 018-470-021. Introduce amend the 350 to 250 feet from the resident on APN 018-470-011. And I would also like to add that the elevation be looked at from the floodplain to where the garden is to make sure that there's adequate elevation, that this isn't just part of that alluvial plain, I think it's called, right? Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, commissioners, feel free to discuss.
I'd have to say, when you look at the variance criteria, and one of them is the shape of the parcel, this is the strangest shaped parcel I've ever seen. And I'm assuming from the topography that it is extremely limited by the floodplain. It's hard to tell, so that's just an assumption.
Correct. I'm very familiar with this parcel. And in fact, it was just down the street from where I went to school and all that. And like when you look on the north side of the road there, it shows the larger building and stuff like that. That's getting right up there against the edge of the hill, and then it starts to climb, and it'll make it the topography makes it very challenging on this parcel. I can vouch for that.
Commissioner Heaton, do you have any sense of the elevation difference from the floodplain to where the garden sits?
You know, I was trying to think that, and it was like, I can't give you an honest answer on that, Bill, in regards to that. I know that it's a little ways, because it's like just down the street was like my kindergarten and high school teachers and stuff like that, and I'd been to their house, and they're a little ways off the floodplain as well. And so I know it is a little ways off of I would assume to be off of the floodplain, but I also know that the vast majority of that property is in the floodplain. And so I do feel that it's definitely out of the floodplain where the bulk of the the agricultural site is.
Did you ever see that flood, Todd, in like the 96, 97 flood?
Actually, I was in Mississippi when that happened.
Well, doggone it.
Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Where I too share concerns about farming close to alluvial floodplains and whatnot. But the environmental document of the EIR will address, my understanding is that it'll address these mitigations or these environmental concerns.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0 to approve the CCV for 2241 with the moves to adopt the California Environmental Quality Act, adopt the PC resolution and Exhibit A with the conditions of the setback, and C, that the elevation be reviewed before issuance of license.
Yep, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to move that we take a short 10-minute recess. Done.
Okay. Go.
Hey, Dad, I have a question. Is everybody at their house or
Duncan and I are at our house.
and is this brake still on?
Okay, we're going to re-adjourn the meeting and open it up for item number 7, zoning determination. Request for a planning commission determination on the applicability of the highway commercial zoning district requirements as it pertains to commercial cannabis cultivation. This request is pursuant to 17.30.010. Location countywide, planner S. Fisher. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Fisher to step forward.
Thank you, Planning Commission Chair, Commissioners, member of the audience in Zoom, and the members. My goodness, I'm just stumbling tonight. Member of the audience in person and the members on Zoom. There we go. For attending and hearing this item 7, the last on our agenda at 8 p.m. Pretty exciting. This one has a little bit of history. There's been a question on whether or not highway commercial or some other zone districts are compatible with commercial cannabis cultivation, given how allowed land uses for commercial cannabis cultivation are described in the cultivation variants. Mostly it just specifies where it isn't allowed rather than calling out specific zones where it is allowed. So it creates questions like this where it's not specifically listed, highway commercial, not highway, like the project title says, highway commercial. Is it allowed? Is it not? So because there was a bit of concern kind of looking at what uses are principally allowed, so by right, or allowed with a use permit, and then comparing that to what is generally perceived to be the type of use, which is commercial cannabis cultivation. Staff decided after talking with cannabis staff to bring this to the Planning Commission for determination. So that section that I was discussing was 17.43.050, which is limitation on the location to cultivate cannabis. And if we were to look at the highway commercial zoning district chapter, which is attached, the general description discusses that uses in the district are kind of like a one-stop shop. So you go in, you do your business, and then you keep on traveling. So it's mostly geared towards recreation, business travelers, but generally even members of the community that are looking to stop in for something, whether it's to use the laundromat, to use a convenience store, those type of uses. And so that's, again, why there was concern that even though it's not called out in the cultivation limitations, that it may not be consistent with commercial cannabis cultivation. That being said, there are a few uses which can be deemed similar when it comes to like land use intensity potentially. So there are uses such as like needing a use permit for a highway commercial structure that's over 10,000 square feet, or I believe taking up, more than 10,000 square feet or occupying more than 2 acres. So that's more like spanning uses. In addition, there are different types of commercial cannabis cultivation activities. So ultimately, there could be a decision that some are compatible while some aren't. There's been a lot of discussion in the office and with consultants asking, okay, well, potentially could outdoor or mixed light not be compatible, but indoor be compatible, because that's like the more industrial, like looking potentially type, if it's just in a structure that's compatible potentially. In addition, there's a lot of discussion that's been brought up by that ancillary uses caveat within the general description. So that was something that was had while the storefront retail ordinance was being made, was saying, okay, well, if we are having a use that's cannabis in highway commercial, then can this be allowed if there's ancillary uses involved? So potentially it could be something like an indoor cultivation with ancillary uses. So while this would apply to all highway commercial parcels in the county. I was speaking to a consultant in the community, Mr. Watkins, who represents a licensee who is one of the people who would be impacted by this. And he was saying, okay, well, there's been communication with the county in the past where it was, okay, well, it could be consistent if there was another cannabis use such as non-storefront retail. So that was another conversation that's been had that could create a determination of, okay, it can be allowed, but with a caveat. All of that being said, given the analysis of this chapter, planning staff believes that commercial cannabis cultivation isn't consistent with the highway commercial district, just because it doesn't really allow for that like public interaction with the use that is typically seen when the use is allowed. When we were looking over different cannabis uses, we were looking at like, well, potentially in the future, if like cannabis tourism is allowed, that could potentially be something compatible. But without like those type of caveats that were discussed before, which can be, you know, an emotion included in the determination, it probably isn't considered consistent. As far as this project being consistent with CEQA, believe that the discussion and action on a request of a commercial cannabis consistency is exempt from CEQA based on section 15061B3, as each cultivation site would be independently evaluated with the Appendix C process, regardless if this determination is made. So this wouldn't, this would be CEQA exempt. Because of that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission determine that the commercial cannabis cultivation is not a similar use in the highway commercial zoning district.
Thank you for that report, Ms. Fisher. Is there any questions for staff? I have one. Is there any study done on how much highway commercial there is available in the county?
There is, so I don't have an exact number, but I know it's over 100, but less than 200.
That parcels?
Yes.
So somewhere in between 100 and 200 available open parcels, just total parcels.
This would be total. And I can.
Developed, undeveloped. Gotcha.
Yeah. And I can have that solid number at the next meeting too.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for staff? Thank you.
Yes, I have a question, Ms. Fisher, if I may.
Go ahead.
So with regards to cultivation, could you provide me some insight into the micro business, what the micro business allows? So my understanding is it's up to 5,000 square feet, but it also allows for distribution, transportation, with the possibility of, is there retail possibility in the micro business? Would you mind just kind of updating me for that information?
Yeah, so I do believe that non-storefront retail is currently listed as.
He's talking about the micro business, not non-storefront retail.
So for the cannabis micro business applications, it's to encompass multiple licenses under one like micro business umbrella. So one of the requirements is that you have to have a cultivation license, and then there's 2 other licenses that you can wrap up in that requirement. So I believe that it is, and I can refer to my book too, just to double check after saying this, but I believe it is distribution, non-storefront, and manufacturing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and so with
I'm
regards,
looking here at the zoning ordinance, I'm seeing, and again, I'm going to get in trouble for looking at the paper. It says manufacturing, distribution. Oh, and you're right, retail, non-storefront retail. You're right.
Okay.
I'm wrong as usual.
and so, if I may, that particular license type of the micro business fits into the category of cultivation.
So for the county, cultivation is required for the micro business, yes.
Mm-hmm. And does it matter what size? I mean, can you have a 10,000 square foot micro business or based on my recollection, it was designated for smaller businesses, but I may be mistaken.
I've only seen the micro business license be pursued for the small license type so far.
Yeah.
And that's 5,000.
That's 10,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it
That's 10.
does say less than 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions for staff? Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Okay. Is there any comments from the floor?
Good evening, commissioners and staff and residents on Zoom. My name is Scott Watkins from Hayfork. And as Planner Fisher mentioned, I do represent one client that has an active application in good standing on a highway commercial zone property. Coincidentally, that application, I'll try not to give too much of the backstory. I'll wait for another day for that. But it was transferred to this property. And we had the same conversation, myself and the former planning director, of whether or not highway commercial was compatible with 500 square foot indoor cultivation. So I feel like I'm having the same conversation again. Coincidentally, 2 years, almost to the day, last Thursday would have been 2 years to the day of when the transfer was accepted, and the termination was made by the former planning director, Kim Hunter, that this particular property that we transferred it to, being a former co-op building for natural herbs, had a similar use to the proposed 500 square foot indoor cultivation, which is why it was accepted. So in my opinion, if staff's recommendation is upheld today by the Planning Commission, it would be a reversal of the decision that was already made by the former planning director. In any event, I think that we can all raise our hand to say we cannot wait for the general plan to be completed and a lot of these inherent issues within our zoning code be resolved, because the highway commercial zoning district, in my opinion, is one that is going to be reworked through the general plan. I think that there are going to be options for properties to be rezoned. I think we know that. The consultants have said that. Perhaps the one project that is currently zoned highway commercial that has the active application in good standing with a CEQA Appendix C completed and under technical review, perhaps it will be rezoned through the general plan. In any event, I believe that, as Planner Fisher mentioned, allowing commercial cannabis cultivation indoors, which would be similar to the recycling allowed indoors without a use permit, that makes sense to me. I do have a couple asks. If the staff's recommendation is upheld, that we make some form of concessions for the single application that has already been allowed. That would be, let me step back. First of all, we would like that application to be able to continue. The applicant has put a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of energy into preparing a complete application.
Scott.
Okay.
No,
I need
that's
15 seconds
Go
to finish my point. Thank you. Our alternatives would be allow that application to transfer to another property. There is a December 8th, 2020 memo by Kim Hunter that prevents transfers to other properties for applications. So that would just give the guy a chance to get his money back from this investment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any comments on Zoom? Please state your name.
David or Veronica?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Veronica Kelly Albies, Douglas City. I will speak first, and then David would also like the opportunity to speak. I am gobsmacked. And I had to find a word that I could use online to say how strongly I'm just confused as to why this is even on the agenda or even discussion. There's no confusion. Highway commercial was always no go for cultivation. It is not of similar use in any capacity. I think staff is on point with this. Probably the only thing similar is use of the word the. The applicant that Mr. Watkins was speaking of has a remedy. They could try for a rezone if it's appropriate. I don't know where it is or where they're talking about, but there is a remedy for those that, have a piece of property that they want to do something on that is not zoned appropriately. This should never be on the agenda. There's no confusion. It's very clear. There's no similar use for cultivation. And I'm again just gobsmacked. And again, we have a general plan coming up. If anything changes, it should happen through that. I suggest that you support the staff's recommendation to find that the cultivation is not a similar use for highway commercial. And now I'm going to I'm going to end my time and turn it over to David Albies.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry. We all have to say that, it's part of the. I'm Dave Albies from Douglas City. I'm in agreement that there's no way highway commercial in any way is any type of use for cultivation or indoor or outdoor marijuana. We're grasping at straws again. Backdooring is basically a very good term here. It sounds like one more attempt before a new board comes on that they're trying to change the general plan, which, boy, there's been lots of attempts before to change the general plan, and we're told absolutely not until we have a new general plan can we rezone these areas. Similar use, are you kidding? This was established over a lot of discussion 3, 5, 6 years ago, and it's been hands off until this moment. I have no idea why this is on the agenda, why it's even being considered. You all know it's beyond words, ridiculous. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else on Zoom?
No, sir.
All right. At this time, I'm going to close it to public comment and bring it back to the commission for a motion.
So I would like to make a motion. I move that the planning commission determine that commercial cannabis cultivation is not a similar use in the highway commercial zoning district.
I will second them. Okay, I'd like to open it up for discussion.
So, comments. So first of all, highway commercial is supposed to serve the need of the traveling public. That's the whole focus of it. If you look at the initial lists of uses, they're talking about convenience stores with or without petroleum sales, restaurants, auto service stations, hotel motels. Obviously things that need to be along a highway. I do also agree it's premature because we are in the middle of developing the general plan. So I'm very hesitant to make this broad determination before the general plan people have looked at it and processed it. The applicant, I feel like it is an end run around the ordinance because when we developed the ordinance back in 2017, we specifically looked at where we wanted to have cannabis cultivation, and highway commercial was not included. So it's kind of, this by declaring it a similar use, you're making an end run around what was written in the ordinance. So there is an option to rezone. I realize that's very expensive. So I don't think it should be declared a similar use. I do think that this particular applicant may want to come back and work with staff for a specific alternative for their property. They may request the planning commission to have permission for that specific one to transfer it to another property, you know, some mechanism that addresses that particular concern without kind of making this a broad brush approval for everything throughout the county. You know, they may want to propose to limit the specific types of cultivation, you know, maybe, okay, a small indoor tourism related cannabis tourism thing, maybe that's okay. But it doesn't do that. It's just broad brush cultivation of any kind. It could be a type 3 cultivation along the highway. And so anyway, I'm just thinking this is way too broad of a solution to a very small problem.
I would have to agree with all your points, Commissioner Fall. My biggest issue with this is the limited amount of highway commercial that we actually have. And for all the reasons that you just said, highway commercial is supposed to be for traveling folks. We should be promoting and supporting businesses that meet that need. I think I just said that backwards. Meet that need. And this is a pretty big brush, and it does not anywhere fit into any of those categories. I feel for the person that has that property there, and I agree with Commissioner Fall that could be brought before the commission under a different time and subject. But certainly the general plan is going to address these things as we move forward. And for us to do anything but to agree with the planning commission or the planning staff director's recommendation, I think would be probably not a good idea on our part. Be bad planning, in my opinion.
Sheriff, if I may.
Go ahead.
So just thinking about the highway commercial within our county, most of Weaverville's highway commercial would be cut out just based on the opt-out zones and proximity to schools. The entirety of the North County would also be with all regards to all the opt-out zones, and Lewiston would also be cut out. And so I went and looked into I didn't, Liz, my wife, looked into where all the highway commercial is, and District 4, which is the Downriver District, has 48% of the highway commercial within the county. And if you take into consideration all the highway commercial that is cut out with the opt-out zones, I would venture to say that it would be more like, I don't know, 50% more than that. And so that's just something to take into consideration when we're considering where the highway commercial is predominantly that we're talking about. That being said, just general cultivation, agriculture on highway commercial does not make sense. However, in the light of the potential future of cannabis tourism, like we see with wine tourism, tasting rooms, whatnot, to allow for a micro business, a small micro business. I could see that, and as I'm envisioning our downriver community and all the boarded up commercial, if we've got 60% of the highway commercial in our downriver district, I would say 80% of it is boarded up and not being used. And so I'm just processing this and considering what could be the possibility of the future of cannabis tourism along with the river tourism. Tourism is a big portion of our downriver district. And so I'd just like to add that into the conversation, the possibility of not just agriculture. I don't agree with just straight cultivation, but with a micro business, with distribution, transportation, a small cottage license that could be indoor or it could be outdoor if it's the right type of environment where it's aesthetic. Being that it's in a wild and scenic area, it can't be seen from the road. There would have to be, with the EIR, there would have to be foliage, native foliage established. It would have to blend within the environment for any new projects, or even existing projects have to. And so I just want to keep my mind open to future possibilities as this industry is evolving, and the production model of large cultivation is on the ropes. I'm hoping to see some type of tourism that could flourish, and we don't want to see tourism on our back roads, on our county roads. The tourist corridors would be along the highways. So I'd just like to add that into the conversation.
Good point. Would you agree that this probably should be something that could be addressed in the general plan update?
I do.
Any other discussion? Okay, can we go to a vote?
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0. For recommendation to not allow commercial cannabis cultivation and highway commercial zoning district.
Correct. With potentially, staff open to discussing resolving that particular issue with that particular applicant.
Yeah, that was my concern also, was to give him some weight to his work.
Is it within our purview to discuss that after our vote? Because I overthought. It is not.
No.
Okay.
Obviously, staff can, if they contact you, can direct them and guide them in a way that they can bring this back for us and get a variance, or not a variance, but a rezone or whatever.
Transfer of permit.
A transfer, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Planning Commissioner reports. Planning Commissioners, does anybody have anything to report?
No.
If I may, I just wanted to let Deborah know that I sent the travel reimbursement form. I emailed it to you today. I apologize for it taking so long, but better late than never.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Any others, commissioners?
I would let you all know that I've been invited to a couple grows out here of a couple gentlemen that I know. That they are both going to be coming up before the they're gonna be coming up before us here shortly, and so but they both personally asked me that when we did the general plan meeting down there, they asked me if I'd come by and check out their place, which I'm very familiar with both of them anyhow. But I just wanted to give you all a heads up that that's in the works.
Thank you.
If I may, Chair, I could like to add just one more point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was asked to sit on the audit committee for the Planning Commissioners Association of California, and so that would be an audit for the 2022 Planning Commissioners Conference, and so I took on that role. So it's an honor to be able to serve and help.
Excellent. All right. Well, if there's nothing else to report, Planning Director's report. You're up, Ed.
How's everybody doing?
Amazing.
It's been a great night. It's been a really really good night, actually, and as Mr. White had said, I'm not a planner. I wasn't brought into this position to be a planner. I was brought here to be an administrator and to help move the process forward. So I appreciate everybody's comments, and we only get better by hearing the things that sometimes kind of nudge us one way or another. So I can appreciate those kind of comments. So I was given a piece of paper, and so I'm just going to read it. So the planning director approved by director decision an amended reclamation plan for a permitted rock quarry known as Blue Rock 2 on the west side of South Fork Mountain in Mad River. There wasn't any background or anything besides that. I was just asked to read that, so I'm reading that.
From who?
It's from Patrick Flynn, he's one of our environmental compliance people in the planning section. He's out there doing good stuff. He goes out to different quarries, mines, does inspections and stuff. So he kind of puts a different aspect on some planning stuff that takes place around the county. It's kind of interesting. That project, the Oregon Gulch project, he was the one that was given all the background information for that, and then was kind of the county look-see on all that's been going on that was approved, and now they're cleaning all those tailings out. Do I have anything else, Skylar?
How good the general plan is going? General plan update?
So we did go out all around the county. It was a crazy week. We had 10 meetings all over the county. Me and Skylar kind of branched out to 2 different areas. She would take one meeting, I would take another meeting on the same night. So we weren't even able to help each other. And since it was just the 2 of us, that was very, very interesting. I did that before with the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and it was very, very similar. A lot of people had a lot of really good ideas. So this general plan is taken pretty serious so far, but I think it's even going to get more serious as people see that this is not going away and it's not going to be stopped this time, and we are going to complete it. There's a lot of irons in the fire. There's a lot of people working to get the background report, to be able to get information out. But we are going to have additional TAC meetings, technical advisory group meetings in January. So that's going to be the next iteration that's planned. And we're actually going to be implementing a Zoom side of the next community meetings that we have as well. So we'll have community meetings, but we'll have Zoom meetings as well. Yeah, we had over 100 people around the county come out to these meetings. So it was very well attended. I was very, very impressed. And I mean, this is home, so.
We appreciate you guys' hard work.
I do want to add, so Skylar, thank you for coming up to Trinity Center. I have heard a lot of feedback from the community that having a community meeting on a Saturday night, the same night that was a big fundraiser for Coffee Creek Fire Department, I got yelled at for not going to it and going to the community meeting instead. So please don't have community meetings on Saturday nights again, because people assume people in little towns don't have anything to do on a Saturday night, but we do.
Commissioner Fall, I'll actually give you another example of why we're not going to do that again. I was actually told by Downriver when we went to Hawkins Bar, please reach out to us beforehand when we schedule these, because they had a big spaghetti fundraiser on the exact same night. And so we run into 2 very, very similar type situations in 2 completely different areas of the county. So that's definitely something that we're going to advise the crew next time around to, that we reach out to everyone beforehand before we start scheduling.
The Journal puts out a pretty good community calendar. If you read that before you plan, you might be able to get some of those.
And how do I get access to Trinity Journal?
Right. I wonder.
Thanks.
Well,
as well as the visitor center. Between the visitor center and the Trinity Journal, you should have a grasp of all the activities going on.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate all the advice. Anything else you want to add, Skylar? No. Okay. I guess we're good to go. That's it for us.
Thank you. Thank you guys for all your hard work, all your staff.
Yeah.
We were going to ask if there was interest in having a meeting on December 15th, since we weren't going to do a meeting on December 22nd. There aren't any specific items on the mind, but there is a backlog of commercial cannabis cultivation variances. So if we did have a meeting on the 15th, there would be items on the 15th just to do 2 meetings for this month instead of 1, but it is at your discretion.
Not available.
I would say no. How many items are we talking that are backlogged?
I don't have an exact number, but we would be able to have like at least 4
How many items do you have scheduled for the 8th so far?
for the 8th. 4.
So can we add some of those to that? Like go 6 or 7?
Probably not because the noticing deadline is tomorrow, but if the 15th is a no-go, then it's a no-go. It's okay.
It's hard for me to be there on the 15th.
Me as well. Rory's out. So I think that settles it. Okay. So we'll have one meeting next month on the 8th, and then our next meeting will then be on the 6th
January
January
12th.
12th.
or 12th, excuse me. Yes. Correct. I knew that. Okay, perfect. All right, a motion we adjourn.
Second.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
I know. We thought we would be here until like 10, so.
I'm running the show.
You guys are on it.
And these people are amazing. All you guys, that was a good meeting. It's great.
Thank you.
Flowed.
Thank you.